Amazing move by Russia. Putin ends the blockade on Cuba. The United States didn't see it coming. In the middle of a terrible economic crisis, marked by the lack of access to essential goods and the scarcity of basic products, the arrival of Russian exports to Cuba represents a significant turning point for Havana and its people. Products like dairy and meat, which were hard to come by, are starting to fill the shelves of Cuban markets, offering immediate relief to a society affected by years of economic and political limitations. This change in Cuba's trade policy with Russia is not only a direct response to the food needs of the Cuban people, but also highlights the power of international cooperation, especially in circumstances as adverse as those faced by the island due to the economic blockade imposed by the United States. The arrival of these Russian products in Cuba is not just a simple commercial operation. It represents an act of resistance and survival in a hostile global environment. For decades, the United States blockade has limited the possibilities of economic development and supply of basic goods in Cuba. However, cooperation with Russia offers the island an alternative way to guarantee the supply of essential products without the restrictions imposed by the US government. A key milestone in this process was the approval of the Russian sanitary control system by the Cuban National Center for Animal Health, which allowed Russian companies registered on export platforms like BS and Server to send essential products to the island without facing additional barriers. This approval, which seemed like an insurmountable obstacle in the past, became an open door for Cuba to access food and basic products, which is highly valued in a country where resource limitations and lack of supply have been a constant. Collaboration with Russia in this context is not just a commercial strategy, but a symbol of what Cuba and other nations of the Caribbean and Latin America could achieve through mutual cooperation in times of crisis. This alliance is not only aimed at solving immediate problems, such as the shortage of products in supermarkets, but is also a demonstration of resistance against an international economic system that often marginalizes the smallest and most vulnerable countries. The possibility of circumventing the barriers imposed by sanctions and opening new supply channels becomes an example to follow for other countries facing similar situations. Cuba is not limited to this cooperation with Russia. It has intensified efforts to diversify its sources of essential goods. This strategy is a direct response to the protests of 2021, when thousands of Cubans took to the streets to express their frustration over the economic crisis and the scarcity of resources. Since then, the Cuban government has focused its efforts on ensuring a constant flow of food and essential products, and the relationship with Russia has been a cornerstone of these efforts. Thanks to trade agreements with Russia, Cuba is now in a stronger position to reduce its dependence on external markets and find alternatives that do not depend on Western policies. This strategic approach also extends to Cuba's entry into the BRICS bloc as an associate member. Cuba's entry into BRICS opens new doors for cooperation with countries like China, Brazil, South Africa, and of course Russia, creating a network of economic support that could be key to overcoming the effects of the US embargo. Through this bloc, Cuba not only has access to new markets, but also benefits from financing and investments that will allow it to strengthen its infrastructure, something that has been a crucial limitation for the island's development until now. Joining BRICS also gives Cuba the possibility of reducing its dependence on the US dollar, which could be crucial at a time of global economic tensions. By strengthening its ties with BRICS countries, Cuba can access more favorable conditions for its trade agreements and expand its capacity to negotiate in a global economic environment in which Western policies, especially those of the United States, have long been an obstacle. In this sense, the BRICS bloc becomes a strategic platform for Cuba, not only from an economic point of view, but also as a support against international pressure. Cuba's entry into BRICS also has the potential to transform the daily lives of Cubans. Through agreements with Russia and other member countries of the bloc, a constant flow of essential products is expected that will alleviate the shortages that have characterized the island for years. Products like food, medicine, and industrial supplies will be able to reach Cuba without the restrictions imposed by international actors, which will translate into a substantial improvement in the quality of life of the Cuban population. In terms of international cooperation, this type of alliance highlights the value of solidarity, among countries that share an alternative approach to the economic and political dominance of traditional powers. The relationship between Cuba and Russia, in particular, is based on a mutual interest in resisting a system that has marginalized Cuba for decades. The island, through its relationship with Russia and other BRICS countries, is forging a path towards economic autonomy, diversifying its sources of income and ensuring the well-being of its population in the midst of adversity. This change is not just an economic matter, but also a political statement that it is possible to build an alternative system of cooperation that challenges the norms of established global trade. The Cuba-Russia alliance offers a model for other Latin American countries which, facing similar difficulties due to the hegemonic policies of the West, can seek alternatives to improve their economic and political situation through mutual collaboration. This type of partnership shows that international solidarity can be a powerful resource for those who, despite external restrictions, fight for their survival and development. In an increasingly interconnected world, the collaboration between Cuba and Russia also offers an important lesson about the importance of cooperation in times of global crisis. This type of alliance not only benefits the parties directly involved, but also serves as an example for other nations seeking alternative ways to develop their economies and protect their national interests. In the end, what is at stake is the construction of a more equitable international community in which small and vulnerable countries can find support in their efforts to overcome poverty, scarcity, and the restrictions imposed by the great powers. The history of Cuba and Russia, marked by decades of joint resistance against external pressures, is a reminder that small steps in the right direction can generate significant changes. International collaboration, when based on solidarity and mutual respect, has the potential to transform lives and entire communities, bringing hope and opportunity where previously there was only despair. This model of cooperation is key to the integration of Latin America into the global system, offering alternatives to traditional economic dominance and building, step by step, a stronger, more united and autonomous region.